Tech by Tips.
Hello and welcome to another Tech by Tips video. In today's video we're going to be addressing another video request that I've received, and this request comes from Merk Rouse, and this says, thank you so much for all the NAS setup videos. I've been going through nearly all of them to get my NAS set up and all the Docker containers. I'm actually using a Ugreen NAS instead of a Synology one, but your instructions are detailed enough that I can translate any differences and still follow along. For our request, could you try setting up Photoprism? Thanks again for all the time and effort you put in your videos. So, alright, let's check this out. This is pretty similar to another application that was requested previously that was named Image, that I haven't gotten to making a video on that yet. But yeah, this one seems pretty straightforward to set up, so we're gonna go and fulfill the request here from Merk Rouse, and let's get to that. First thing is we can go into the GitHub and we'll find this application at github.com/photoprism/photoprism. And as you can see here, it is an AI powered photos app for the decentralized web, and it's written in Go mainly, a little bit of JavaScript and Vue, and it has been released over 70 times, so this is well supported. It has 169 contributors. That is always good to hear and see. And if we go down a little bit here, it says what it is for. It says, browse your life in pictures. So this is an application that you can basically see from the name. It's concerned about photos and videos, and it says that it's an AI-powered photos app, and it makes use of the latest technologies to tag and find pictures automatically without getting in your way. You can run it at home, on a private server, or in the cloud, basically anywhere you have computing power. And we have a nice screenshot here of the application, and if you actually want to try it yourself before setting it up, they have a link here to a public demo of the application. If you click here, it's going to take you here to that demo where you can see things. For example, if you have an image that is live, if you hover over it, you'll see that it does behave like, for example, in your phone when you have a live image. So that's pretty cool. Let's go back into the GitHub, and this basically talks about the features. You can also see the features if you go into the website, which is www.photoprism.app/features, and then you'll see here all the features. Let's read it from here because I think it's going to be better. It says that you can run it basically everywhere. It's a progressive web app, so you don't need to install anything in your devices, like your phone or anything like that. As long as you have access to the web browser version of it, you have the progressive web app. And they recommend using Docker for the installation, but they have a bunch of other ways that you can install it. It has search built into it, so you can find photos and videos based on different things that you're interested in. It has facial recognition, so it lets you tag like family and friends in your photos, so that's cool. It has maps and places, so I'm assuming that it can read the metadata on your images and videos, and then it can use a world map here to show you like where those pictures were taken based on the metadata that your information, like your photos, have. You're allowing also other people to see your content if you want, so you can share your albums to people, and then they can access, as long as they can access your application, like meaning you expose it, then they can see those albums that you have shared with them, so that's nice. And they support a lot of formats for the files, like JPEG, PNG, all of that, and even video files like MP4 and MOV. It does the metadata extraction on its own, so it is able to identify the metadata from your pictures, so that's also pretty nice. It can detect if you have duplicates of your photos or videos, so then it can basically remove those duplicates. It doesn't import the same image or video multiple times. It can do backup and sync, so you can connect it to other services to do that. And it's 100% private because you host it yourself and you own it, so that's good. And they're building more features for that. So basically that's all the features that they're representing the application to have. If you go down here to the section that says Getting Started, that's when you can find installation instructions. When you click on this link, then it'll take you to the other site that has the instructions here, and that's in docs.photoprism.app. And we're going to be looking at the Docker Compose because that's really what we care about, since we're going to be setting this up in a Synology NAS, but it also works for any other system. Works for Windows, Linux, anything like that. So we can always rely on this. If you go here on where it says Compose YAML file, this link takes you to a Docker file that then we're going to be using is this. It's a pretty long Docker file, or it seems like it, because it has a lot of comments, which is good. It means that, you know, if you don't know what to do, they're going to give you details on what to do and what not to do. So that's good. So let's set this up. First of all, if we go back here into the documentation on how to set it up, we're going to scroll down a little bit and we're going to see that it says that it requires a MariaDB server. As you know, I've been using a MariaDB instance in the lab that has been installed using the Synology package manager because it's more reliable right now on DSM 7.2. So I would recommend that you set the database that way, because if you're going to be using the container, it's going to get complicated very fast because the terminal doesn't work properly and you need to, you know, SSH into the machine then, and then log into the container and then run commands in order to expose it from one container to another. So to save yourself that pain in the butt, just set it up like I said with the package manager. And it says that we also need to mount some volumes here for the application to use. So as usual, we're going to be going into the NAS and we're going to be creating those folders that are necessary. And based on what I can see here, basically you need an originals folder, and that's where it's going to contain the original photo and video files. And then there's another one that is necessary here, which is the storage. So this is where it is used to save the config, cache, backup, thumbnail, and sidecar files, right? So those are the main two that we need. We'll see in the Docker Compose file that we're going to have options to add more stuff if we want, but those are like the core ones that you at least need. So let's go here into the NAS, go into the Docker projects, and in here I'm going to create a folder for Photoprism, and I'm going to go into the configs, which is where I put all the stuff for the containers, and I'm going to create another Photoprism folder here. And now we need to identify what folders we need to put in here. So we said that if we look at the Docker Compose file, it says that on the volumes we need the original media file. So we need originals. So let's go in here and create a new folder for originals. And we also need to create another folder that says is for the storage. If you notice, these are the only two that are not commented out. These other two are commented out, and the same with this one. This is an example. So the non-commented out are the required ones, as you can see. So we need to create another one that says storage. So create folder, storage. It tells us also that we can create subfolders within the originals folder. That's if you can, like if you want to separate stuff. But in my case, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it simple. You can also optionally create an import folder, which is where the application can look for stuff that you drop there, and then it's going to import it into the originals directory and then have them like the originals, right? So those are the main options here, but I'm just going to do the storage and the original for the sake of this video. Now, let me copy this Docker Compose file. Now that we have the folders that we need here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the container manager. I'm going to go into projects and I'm going to create a new project for Photoprism, and I'm going to look for that path in the projects folder that I just created, and I'm going to say that I'm going to create a new Docker Compose file, and I'm going to paste what I just saw from the website. Since the real estate that we have to see the file here is too limited, I'm going to say next, but don't start the project and done. And now we should see a new option coming up here soon in the projects, and we can click on Photoprism, click here on the YAML configurations, and now we'll be able to see this in an easier way to read it with more space. Now we have to look at some notes that the developers have put here on the very top, and one of the main things that I noticed with this application is that this application requires a good amount of resources. Why? Well, it is a server that needs swap space to do operations on the files that it receives. Remember, we have an originals folder and then we have like a storage, because it's doing things to those files and then copying them to the other folder. And we can think that given that this is an AI focused kind of application, it needs also memory to do all of those AI processes that it needs. So it needs at least 4 gigabytes of swap space and memory. So you need to be aware of that. If you don't have enough space, it's going to be a problem for you to run this application on your NAS. And it says that it could crash the application if you don't give it enough. So just, I want to make that very aware for you, that you have to have that into consideration. Additionally, here's a very important note that they make, which I don't know why they even allow this to happen, but it says that if you're running this on a public server, so exposed to the public internet, make sure to put it behind a reverse proxy like Traffic or Caddy. Why? Because for some reason the application transmits the files and passwords in clear text. And if you have it open to the public internet, then anyone can intercept that. They can catch your files and your passwords from the network traffic. So, don't do that. Don't just expose it. Put it behind a proxy in case you're going to make it public. So I would recommend not even make it public. Just host it internally, and if someone needs access to that, give them a VPN. And they have 3 guides here for the setup and other stuff here for us to know. And here's where we start defining the containers and the services that we need. So this is the actual application container, the Photoprism. And as we can see, it looks like it is coming from Docker Hub, and we're using the latest version of that image. And in here, they have disabled the restart unless stopped, because they say, only do it after you've made sure that everything is working. Yeah, I'm gonna enable it from now. Now we have a problem here. It says that we have the dependency on the MariaDB container. So this, if we scroll down a little bit, we'll see that it's trying also to create a MariaDB container. So I'm gonna get rid of this, because like I said, I would recommend you to not do it this way given the restrictions that we currently have on DSM 7.2. So no dependency on that. We have our database on the package that is installed in the NAS, so we shouldn't have any problem with that. And then here it says that we have a stop grace period of 10 seconds. It's something that I don't know if you really need it, but I'm just gonna leave it there. And then we have some security options that basically tell the operating system to not confine the container using AppArmor or security compliance. I don't know why they need that, but that's in there, so let's just leave it there. Now here is where we would expose our container. So the container is going to be listening on port 2342, but we need to specify here, remember, outside on the NAS, inside the container. So on the NAS, I'm going to use 8074, I believe 8075 was the last one that I used. And then we have a bunch of environment variables here. The good thing is that they do give us a lot of details here about all of these things, so we can basically read on that and set it up however we want. So this says that the admin user in the application is going to be admin, and then this is going to be the initial administrator password, so you can put whatever you want here. Let me put password in our case, and it says that we're going to be authenticating using password. That means that the application is going to be locked. If you say public, I guess it's not going to prompt you, it's just going to get you access to the application. And then here's where we would define the site URL. So if you're exposing this application, then you would put your domain or subdomain, right? But in our case, then we would just put the IP of the NAS, which in my case would be this, and then the port that I'm specifying on that NAS. So that would be the site URL that I'm going to specify for this. We have other stuff like, for example, disable TLS. That makes sure that the communication is using a secure connection. If you disable it, then it's not going to do that. It's just going to be HTTP. So in my case, I'm going to set this to true. I'm not going to expose this outside, so let's do that. So we disable HTTPS. Now it says here that if we enable this, even if we have TLS enabled, then it'll use a self-signed certificate as a default. So if you have your own certificate, you would put this as a false instead. And then here we have a limit of how many originals we can have. So it's at 5,000 megabytes, so 5 gigabytes. And this is about the compression. It's going to be using gzip. And now here for the log level, you have different levels here. So pick the one that you want. Info seems accurate for me. If you have any problems, then you would put something like debug, which gives you more details. But honestly, you shouldn't need it unless you're having problems. Then we have other options here. There's actually quite a lot in here, so I'm sorry if this video is going too long, but that's how it is. The first thing that we have here is read-only. So this makes the application behave in a way where you cannot modify the originals folder. So basically makes the application work read-only. and reduces the functionality, obviously. If you enable the experimental features, then you're going to have some features that are not perfect yet, but if you want to try them, you can do that. And if you disable shown, then it doesn't let the application to change the permissions of the files. So you might have issues with the accessibility of the files. Then if you disable WebDAV, it disables the WebDAV server. If you disable the settings, then it disables the settings UI and API. If you disable TensorFlow, it disables all the things that are depending on TensorFlow. I believe that's all related to AI. If you disable faces, then it's not going to do face recognition, which needs TensorFlow. And classification again, if you disable it, it's not going to do classification, but if you have it enabled, you also need to have TensorFlow enabled. What else? Vectors. If you disable it, it disables the vector graphics support. If you disable RAW, then it disables indexing, the conversion of RAW images. That not a lot of people know about this, but with high-end cameras, you can get your images stored into RAW files instead of, for example, PNG or JPEG or stuff like that. So that's probably what it refers to. And here it talks about presets, and it allows you to apply presets to converting the RAW images. Obviously, this reduces performance because it has to change the raw image into a file format, so just know that. The YAML, the sidecar YAML, allows you to create a YAML sidecar file for your picture metadata for the albums to be backed up, so creates a YAML file for that. Backup database creates a regular backup based on schedule. And here you specify the schedule for the backup, so by default it's going to be daily. And honestly, there's a lot of other things here. I would just suggest you keep on reading what's on the right side and see what's relevant for you. In this case, the change that we're going to make here is on the Photoprism database, we're going to be using MySQL because MariaDB is a MySQL type of database. And in here, it's like a URL to your instance, but in our case, we're not going to put the name of the container because we're not using a container. So we're going to put the IP of the NAS, and then we need to specify the port that we're going to be using for this application. And I believe I set it up to work on port 3307. Actually, no, I'm wrong. I set it up in 3306. So we can fix that and put 3306 again. Right, which is the default port for MySQL. And then in here would specify the database name that is going to contain all of our information, the user that we're going to use to connect to that database, and the password for that. So let me put something a little bit longer, something like that. And this is the site caption, so I'm assuming that this is going to be showing in the application when we see the URL. And you can put the site description and the author. Basically, that's the main things that we need here. There's a few things that have been commented out, and this is related to video transcoding. Transcoding basically means you have a video that you have uploaded in one extension and format, right? And then you can convert that from that format and extension to another one. So for example, you might have uploaded that as an H.264, and then you want to change it to something else like H.265, which is a higher level of compression. Or maybe you want to change from 1080 to 720. You can do that in transcoding. So these things are details that you have to specify to do those conversions in the case that you want to do it. So you uncomment this out, and then you specify here what options you're gonna do. If you see here, it needs an encoder to do this. Basically, it's telling me that you need a graphics processor for this. So if you use software, it'll probably use the CPU, so that's gonna increase your CPU usage dramatically. But if you have an Intel graphics card, then you can use Intel. If you have an NVIDIA graphics card, you can use that. If you have an Apple embedded graphics card in your M3, for example, processor, you can use that. If you have a Raspberry Pi, running in a Raspberry Pi, then usually the Raspberry Pi also has a type of embedded graphics card, so you can use that, or VA API if you have that. So you have to specify which one you want to use, the size that you want to convert, and the bit rate that you want to convert. Also, you have other options here. For example, if you want to run and install on the first startup, then you can put the setup here for that. And you also have the options here to run this as another user. And then you would specify here under which user ID and group ID and mask this process is gonna run. So that's something that I'm not gonna be doing, but you have the option to do. Now, if you want the container to run as another user, I would say let's do that, because we need access to those folders that we created, and we're gonna be mounting here. So we're gonna say run as the default administrator of the Synology NAS. If you have something else, like if you created another account, then you need to look at the video that I uploaded on how to identify the user ID and group ID for that. But in default, it's going to be 1026-100 for the first administrator that you created on your NAS. Here is when you are trying to use AI. Like I said, you need to have hardware that allows you to do all of this. That usually means a graphics card. So if you have a graphics card on your computer running Synology or in a Synology NAS, you have the option here to use the appropriate line for the type of graphics card that you have. If you have an Intel graphics, you use this one. If you have NVIDIA CUDA, you use whatever is in here relevant to your card. And if you have something else, then you use this one. I don't know exactly what this means. Video for Linux. Anyway, you have to identify which type of device maps to that device that you're trying to pass to the container to be able to run the AI loads. And again, the working directory that we're going to set up is the Photoprism. So we're going to leave it like that. And then here's the trick. We have the two folders that I said that we need by default. So let me reorganize this a little bit. I'm going to put this right together. So we have the originals and we have the storage. So let's go back here into the configs and let's copy originals, the path. And I'm going to go in here into originals and I'm going to put that here. And in here, I'm going to do the same thing, but it's going to be for storage. So let me remove originals and that's going to be storage. So that's mounting the Photoprism originals inside the container to the NAS on that folder that we created. And since we have given it the right user, it should be able to do that properly. So we don't have any problem here. And now that I'm here, it is trying to create that database container that I was mentioning before, but we're not going to be using this. So I'm just going to entirely delete this, right? And if you come here, you'll see that it also has the option for you to create another container that is a helper and is optional, which is Watchtower. And this is a container that allows you to automatically upgrade your containers whenever there was a new push to the image. This is going to be a future video that I'm going to cover, so we're not going to be using it now, but just know that that's what it means. I'm going to remove it, so I'm just going to have the stuff that is related to the application Photoprism, and that's all that we need. Right now, I'm going to save, but I'm not going to build, because we haven't set up the database yet. So let me say OK, and let's keep the details that I specified here for the database, because now we need to work on that. I'm going to go into my database. Like I said before, I just created an entry for my NAS database, and I'm able to log into it to the IP of the NAS :3306 with the root user. And if we go in here, as you can see, I've already used this before for other videos. So I have the Invoice Ninja database, the ROM Manager database, a Snipe IT database, but I don't have a database for the application that we're working with right now, which is Photoprism. So let's go here and copy the name of that database. So we're going to go here and update this query that we're going to be executing. And the name is also Photoprism. So I'm going to change the user that I'm going to create here, but the password is different. So let me copy all of this and I'm going to replace the password here. And again, Photoprism for the database and the user. And now we have all that we need to execute to create that. As you can see, if I refresh, I don't have the database. If I go into the server users and privileges, I do not have a user for Photoprism either. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to execute this command that says create a database Photoprism, and it was successful. So if I refresh here, we have a new Photoprism database, but it has no tables, it has nothing. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a user that is going to have all of the access that it needs to manage this database, but only this database. So you can see that I'm going to create a user named Photoprism that can connect from anywhere, and its password is going to be this. So whenever I execute this line, now we should have a user. If I go into server users and privileges, we have a Photoprism user, but if I go into privileges, it doesn't have any permission to do anything. So that's what we need to fix next. What we're going to do is we're going to go into this line that says give it all the privileges on this specific database to the user named Photoprism from anywhere. And when we run this, Now it has succeeded. If I go into server user and privileges and I go into Photoprism and I go into schema privileges, now we can see that on the database or the schema named Photoprism, it has all of the permissions. Basically, it's an administrator for that database. And now that we have created a database, created a user, and granted the permission to that database, to that user, we need to flush the privileges to make sure that all of those permissions take effect. And with that, we should have our database ready to be used by our container. So we should be able to go back into the NAS, and now we should be able to then go into the project, say action build, and it'll pull the image and build that container. So I'm going to give it time to do all of that, and I'll be back when that is done. Alright, it took a few minutes, but we can see exit code 0, which means it was built successfully. And here's the notification coming up. So now we can go into the containers and kind of monitor it to see what's going on. As we can see, it was started using the administrator account that I specified, and it says that the account already exists and it's updating permissions and all of that. So it has the HTTPS enabled, so it's creating a default certificate and generating a certificate authority. And as you can see, it continued doing things. So we can see that it's working on the storage path. So let's see if we can see changes here. Let's go into the originals. Okay, I don't see any. Oh, there we go. That was weird. Okay, nothing here yet. Let's go into the other folder, storage. Alright, so it is creating stuff here in the storage, so it successfully manages the folders, which is one of the things that we wanted to validate. It has the permissions, and if we go here, it's telling you that there's some additional benefits if you become a member and all that. It's running as that administrator user. Now let's see another thing. If we go into the database, remember we didn't have any tables here. So let's see if it was able to connect here and do anything. So I'm going to refresh. And here we go. We now have tables, which lets me know that it was successful at connecting to the database, and it was successful at creating things. So that's good. It means that we had a successful connection here to the database. And now let's see if we can get any more information of what is going on. So now it's doing migrations. Okay, so this usually is a process that is being done in the database. So the database schema has changed over time. So they make changes here to the tables. As you can see, we're now getting more tables. So every time it does an update, it probably moves stuff and updates what the tables look like and stuff like that. So we need to give it time to do this. In previous applications that I've set up in the channel already, we've seen that this process can take a while if it is an application that has matured enough. So we might see several migrations happening. So I'm going to stop the video, let it do its thing, and come back when I'm pretty sure there's nothing else going on. Alright, I should have probably highlighted that this is at the info level, so it's only showing me entries whenever something has completed. So right now I know it's working on the database still with other migrations because I can refresh here and see new tables popping up, but it doesn't show it on the logs until that's completely done, so be aware of that. If you want to see more in detail when something is happening, increase this from info to debug on the first time that you run the container so that you can kind of know what's going on instead of just waiting here. But if you don't have any problem, you can just leave it alone for, half an hour, 1 hour, and then come back and check, and we'll probably be there at that time. So just pointing this out. Alright, it took about an hour to get to the point where we see the listening on message. So I would assume now that we don't see any more updates here, so that the application should be running. If we go into the database and we refresh, we'll see that it created a lot of tables and a lot of different things on the database. So you can see all of this was created. Yeah, the database setup takes a while, so give it some time. Let's try to see now if we can get to the IP of the NAS on the port 8074 that I specified, and here we go. Immediately the user interface of Photoprism loaded up, and remember that we said that we needed some username and password that we defined in here. So we can go back into the configuration here, look for that, and we said that the application would be admin and password to log into the application. So let's try that. Let's go here and put admin without a G and password and try to log in. Perfect. we were able to log into the application. As we can see, it says that we do not have any pictures because I haven't put anything there, but the application gave us access to itself. And as we can see, we have an option here that shows us like filters and stuff, and here we have an option to upload images, so you can directly upload your images from here into the application. And in here we have a way to change the look of it. It could be like thumbnails that we saw in that demo that was working online, or a list. So let me go into the demo better to show this because I don't have anything here. Alright, so let's see this from this side. So this is what I was talking about, that you can change the view, and in here you can reload the images, etc. And here's what I said that you have as filters. So with the metadata you can filter stuff. For example, we want to see Cuba, we select that. If we want to see, I don't know, United States, we select that, and it filters the images. So we have that up here in the top bar. On the left side we can increase the size of this, and we can see what this is covering. We have the search, which is where we start by default. We can go to the albums if we create albums, and then we can see the photos that we have specified in the albums. We can look at the videos if we have any, and we can define people here, and that's by AI. The AI is able to recognize different people in the photos, and I assume that this would also allow you to select a person and then show you all the photos where that person appears, and that's correct. If we go into favorites, anything that we have marked as favorite is going to show up in here. We have also the ability of specify moments, and the moments can have a name. And it looks like it's like a sort of an album that it's created. We have the calendar. The calendar allows us to see the pictures, but more on a timeline of when the pictures were taken and all of that. So that's pretty nice. We have the places here. That's where it shows us the world map. And in the world map, we can go all the way very close to where the pictures were taken. So it's really accurate. It goes based on the metadata that our phones put in the images when we take the picture. So it has a latitude and longitude, and we can validate that in the map. That's very nice. We can also put labels on the photos and videos. We can create folders for this. I'm assuming that this is the folders that get created where it stores the information in the storage folder, and you can name that folder by clicking on it and add details into that. That's very nice. And on private, here you would have photos that are exclusively for you to see, so you can put restrictions on who can see that. If you go into the library here, then we have the options to see the originals here, to see the hidden images and any errors that you get. And again, here's the settings for the application. We can go into the users, create different users, and assign permissions to them. And then here's where we have information about the license for the application, and the about that gives us details about the application. So it's pretty straightforward. It's a photo application, and basically we have covered how to set it up properly. And in this case, since I didn't have any photos or images in my own instance, I relied on the demo to kind of show you what you can do here. So I hope you liked it. That's gonna be it for this video. If you did, remember to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed to the channel, and leave me comments in the comment section below. This video and many others that I've been doing recently are because people are leaving me comments of things that they would like to see covered in the channel. I try to reply to you as soon as possible, and I put your requests in a queue, and as soon as I can get one done, I do that. I had a pretty long queue, so that's why I've been recently doing a lot of video requests in a row. But yeah, remember also, I'm not monetizing the channel. You should not be receiving any ads on my videos. And that means also that I'm not making any money from YouTube. I rely entirely on your support, so if you want to support me to continue to create good quality content for you and help you out, go to the link in the description below and donate through PayPal, or you can also donate through Bitcoin if you want. There's the Bitcoin address there too. That's going to be it for this one. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.